Imagine you hire a builder to construct a new home for your family. You pour your life's savings into it, watching the mud brick walls rise under the Mesopotamian sun. But the builder cuts corners using poor materials and shoddy techniques. One day, the house collapses, and in an instant, your child is killed. In the suffocating grief that follows, a single, burning question emerges. What is justice? Nearly 3,800 years ago, in the bustling city of Babylon, a king decided this question was too important to be left to chance or to the whims of the powerful. His name was Hammurabi, and his kingdom straddled the fertile plains of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in what is now modern Iraq. Hammurabi's answer was not a quiet decree whispered in a palace chamber. It was a monumental statement, carved for eternity into a 7.5-foot tall pillar of black diorite. At its top, a relief shows the king himself, standing in reverence before Shamash, the god of justice, who extends to him the rod and ring, symbols of divine authority to establish law and order. Below this image, etched in the elegant wedge-shaped script of cuneiform, are 282 laws. This is the Code of Hammurabi. For centuries, it has been famous and infamous for its seemingly brutal punishments, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But to see it as only a list of harsh penalties is to miss its revolutionary genius. This Stele was far more than a simple rulebook. It was a sophisticated instrument of statecraft, a masterpiece of royal propaganda, and a profound theological statement. It was Hammurabi's promise to his people that justice was no longer a private matter but a public right, guaranteed by the king and ordained by the gods. It was a blueprint for a society where everyone, from the highest noble to the lowest commoner, knew the rules. To understand this incredible monument is to understand the world that forged it, and to witness a pivotal moment in our long human struggle to define fairness, power, and the very purpose of civilization. If you're enjoying this, hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. To understand the world Hammurabi built, we must first understand the world he inherited, one of chaos, competition, and deep ancient memory. Around 2 centuries before his birth, the great Sumerian civilization, centered on the city of Ur, had collapsed. This was the last native Sumerian empire to rule Mesopotamia, the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Its fall created a power vacuum, shattering the region into a mosaic of rival city-states, each ruled by a king who saw himself as the rightful heir to that grand imperial legacy. This was a time of constant, low-level warfare, shifting alliances, and profound political instability. Into this fractured landscape came new peoples, most notably the Amorites. Migrating from the west, these Semitic-speaking groups were initially seen as outsiders, nomads from the harsh lands beyond the river valleys. But they were ambitious and adaptable. Over generations, they settled in the cities of Mesopotamia, adopted its customs, and eventually, through political maneuvering and military force, established their own ruling dynasties. In 1894 BCE, one such Amorite family took control of a modest city on the Euphrates. That city was Babylon. But these new rulers did not erase the culture they found. The legacy of the Sumerians was too powerful, too deeply embedded in the soil of Mesopotamia. The Amorites learned to write their own language using the Sumerian invention of cuneiform script. They worshipped Mesopotamian gods, studied Sumerian literature, and inherited Sumerian ideas about kingship, science, and law. The world of Hammurabi was therefore a dynamic synthesis, a new, energetic Semitic culture built upon the ancient, sophisticated foundations of Sumerian civilization. It was a world that looked forward to new possibilities of empire while constantly looking back to a golden age of the past. When Hammurabi ascended the throne of Babylon in 1792 BCE, his kingdom was just one player in a dangerous political game. To the south, the powerful kingdom of Larsa controlled the ancient heartland of Sumer. To the north and east, the cities of Eshnunna and Mari were major regional powers. Babylon was respected, but it was not yet the master of Mesopotamia. It was a kingdom with potential, surrounded by rivals who could crush it. The task facing the young king was monumental: to survive, to expand, and ultimately to forge a lasting order out of the inherited chaos. To understand Hammurabi's vision, we have to look at how he presented it. The text inscribed on the famous Stele isn't just a dry list of punishments, it's a carefully constructed three-part monument. It begins with a grand prologue, a theological and political mission statement. In it, Hammurabi declares that the great gods of Mesopotamia, Anu and Enlil, had elevated Babylon's own god, Marduk, to supremacy over humanity. And it was Marduk who then commanded Hammurabi to make justice prevail in the land, to destroy the wicked and the evil, and to prevent the strong from oppressing the weak. This is the birth of the shepherd king ideal, the ruler as the divinely appointed protector of his flock. Following this prologue are the laws themselves, nearly 300 of them, covering everything from property disputes and trade regulations to family law and violent crime. And after the laws comes the epilogue. Here, Hammurabi casts his work in stone for eternity. He calls upon any future king to uphold his statutes, promising blessings for those who do and laying down terrifying curses upon any who would dare to alter or erase his words. The entire structure frames the laws not as mere legislation, but as an act of divine piety and a timeless monument to his own just reign. But this justice was not blind. It looked upon a person and immediately assessed their social standing. Babylonian society, as reflected in the code, was rigidly stratified into three main classes. At the top was the Awalim, a free person of the upper class, a landowner, a high-ranking official, a patrician. Below them was the Mushkenum, a free person of a lower or dependent status, perhaps a commoner or someone in service to the palace. And at the bottom was the Wardum, a slave who was considered property but still possessed some limited legal rights. The law applied to each class differently. If an Awilim put out the eye of another Awilim, then his own eye would be put out. But if he put out the eye of a Mushkenum, he simply had to pay a fine of 1 mina of silver. Justice was a sliding scale, directly tied to one's worth in the social hierarchy. This hierarchy was built upon a dynamic economic engine. The laws give us a vivid picture of a society powered by the Fertile Crescent's agriculture, barley, dates, and sesame, with intricate rules governing irrigation, land rental, and liability for runaway oxen. This was also a world of bustling commerce. Babylon sat at a crossroads of trade, and the code meticulously regulates contracts, debt, and interest rates, with silver serving as the standard medium of exchange. The great institutions of the palace and the temples were not just religious or political centers. They were massive economic households, owning vast tracts of land and controlling much of the state's wealth. The code, therefore, is a blueprint for this entire system, an attempt to impose order on a complex and often contentious social and economic world. So how do we know all of this? How can we speak with any confidence about a world that vanished nearly 4,000 years ago? Our understanding rests on evidence that is both monumental and mundane, starting with one of the most famous artifacts in human history, the Stele of Hammurabi. Imagine a single imposing pillar of black diorite standing over 7 feet tall. It's a powerful, almost intimidating object. Carved into its polished surface in meticulous cuneiform script are the nearly 300 laws that form the code. But before the laws, at the very top, is a relief carving that tells you everything you need to know about its purpose. We see 2 figures. One is King Hammurabi, standing in a pose of reverence. Before him, seated on a throne, is the great god Shamash, the Mesopotamian deity of the sun, and more importantly, of justice. Shamash is extending to Hammurabi the rod and ring, traditional symbols of divine authority and kingship. The message is unambiguous. These are not merely the king's laws, they are the laws of a god delivered through the king. Ironically, this quintessential symbol of Babylonian power wasn't found in Babylon. It was discovered by French archaeologists in 1901, hundreds of miles away in the ancient city of Susa in modern-day Iran. Centuries after Hammurabi's death, an Elamite king had sacked Babylon and carried the stele off as a prize of war, a testament to its enduring value as a symbol of power. Today it stands in the Louvre Museum in Paris, a silent witness to the rise and fall of empires. But for all its grandeur, the stele doesn't tell the whole story. The true texture of Babylonian life is found on something far more humble: baked clay. Archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of thousands of cuneiform tablets from across Mesopotamia. These are not grand pronouncements, but the paperwork of daily existence. Marriage contracts, sales receipts, personal letters, loan agreements, and court depositions. These tablets show us the world the code was meant to govern. They reveal the concerns of merchants, the anxieties of farmers, and the legal disputes of ordinary families, providing a rich, detailed context that the monumental stele alone cannot. This written evidence is complemented by the patient work of archaeology, which unearths the physical layout of their cities, temples, and homes. And it's all the product of a deeply sophisticated intellectual culture. This was the same civilization that developed a complex, base 60 mathematical system, the reason we still have 60 seconds in a minute, and mapped the heavens with an astronomical precision that was unrivaled for 1,000 years. This systematic, ordered view of the cosmos is the same intellectual framework that produced the logical cause and effect structure of the code itself. Having seen the laws and the world they governed, a crucial question arises. What was this code really for? Was it a book of statutes that a Babylonian judge would consult every day? The evidence suggests something far more profound. For decades, scholars have argued that the Code of Hammurabi is less a practical legal handbook and more a magnificent piece of royal propaganda. Think of its physical form. A massive, 2.5-meter-tall monument of black diorite. It wasn't found in the ruins of a courthouse, but in a temple complex, a place of public and divine significance. Its primary function was to be seen. It was a declaration, a permanent testament to Hammurabi's divinely ordained role as the ultimate dispenser of justice. It was a monument celebrating an ideal of justice, with the king as its sole author. This ideology is embedded deep within the laws themselves, especially in the most famous principle associated with the code, lex talionis, or the law of retaliation. We all know the phrase, an eye for an eye. But in Hammurabi's Babylon, whose eye mattered, depended entirely on your social status. For example, Law 196 states that if an Awilam, a member of the upper class, blinds the eye of another Awilam, then his own eye shall be blinded. This is perfect retaliation. However, Law 198 says that if that same Awilam blinds the eye of a mushkenim, a commoner, he simply pays a fine of 1 mina of silver. And if he blinds the eye of a slave, a wardem, the fine is even less. An eye for an eye only truly applied between social equals. Far from establishing universal equality, the law was a tool for reinforcing the existing social hierarchy. This is where Hammurabi's political genius shines. In the code's prologue and epilogue, he doesn't present himself as a conqueror, but as a shepherd chosen by the gods. He claims his purpose is to make justice prevail in the land, to destroy the wicked and the evil, that the strong might not oppress the weak. The laws, with all their stratified detail, are presented as the ultimate proof of this sacred duty. The stele is his performance review, submitted to the gods and his people for all time. It's a masterful fusion of law, religion, and public relations. So, while the code certainly reflects the legal principles of its time, its grand purpose was to sculpt an image of the ideal king. It established a powerful new model of kingship where the ruler was not just a warlord but the direct guarantor of cosmic order and social justice on earth. The Code of Hammurabi is often held up as the first great law code in human history, a singular moment when justice was first carved into stone. But the historical reality is more complex and, frankly, more interesting. Hammurabi was not the first Mesopotamian king to issue a set of laws. Centuries before him, a Sumerian king named Ur-Nammu, ruler of the city of Ur, created his own code. Other collections of laws from cities like Eshnunna and Isin also predate Babylon's famous Stele. So what made Hammurabi's effort so revolutionary? It was a matter of scale, ambition, and public relations. His code was far more comprehensive, covering a wider swath of daily life than any that had come before. And crucially, he monumentalized it, displaying it publicly on a massive stone pillar intended to last for eternity. He didn't invent the idea of a law code, but he perfected its form and elevated it into an enduring symbol of royal justice. The second popular image of the code is one of unyielding brutality defined by the famous principle of an eye for an eye. And while the punishments could indeed be severe, focusing only on the physical retribution misses the larger picture. Buried within the nearly 300 laws are provisions that reveal a deep concern for social order and economic fairness. There are laws that set what were essentially minimum wages for laborers like ox drivers and boatmen, preventing their exploitation. There are complex regulations for divorce that often ensured a woman received her dowry back. Laws protected people from slander and false accusations with harsh penalties for those who brought baseless charges. The code even established a form of state-backed insurance for merchants whose caravans were robbed. This wasn't just a catalogue of punishments. It was an attempt to regulate a complex economy and protect citizens from fraud, negligence, and misfortune, at least within the rigid confines of their social class. Finally, it's crucial to remember that Hammurabi's Babylon did not exist in a vacuum. It was a major hub in a vibrant and interconnected ancient world. Cuneiform tablets discovered across the Near East reveal a constant web of diplomacy and trade. Babylonian merchants traveled far and wide, their activities governed by the kinds of contracts outlined in the code. Hammurabi himself was a master diplomat before he became a conqueror, exchanging letters with rival kings in Mari, Lhasa, and beyond. The tin for their bronze tools and weapons might come from the mountains of modern-day Afghanistan, and the lapis lazuli decorating their temples from the same distant region. Babylon was a cosmopolitan center, and its laws reflect the need to manage a society connected by rivers of trade and currents of international politics. By looking past the common myths, we see a more nuanced picture. Not the first code, but the most ambitious. Not just brutal, but also protective. Not an isolated kingdom, but a central player on the world stage. To truly grasp the principles Hammurabi championed, we must move beyond the abstract text on the stele and imagine the lives it was meant to influence. Let's step into the bustling streets of Babylon and explore a few hypothetical scenarios, not as literal court cases, but as illustrations of the king's vision for justice. Imagine a builder constructs a new house for a wealthy citizen, an awilam. The work is shoddy, and soon after the house collapses, killing the owner. According to Hammurabi's code, the principle of accountability is absolute and terrifying. The builder himself would be put to death. This is the famous lex talionis, the law of retaliation, in its starkest form. But this justice is not one size fits all. If the collapse had killed the owner's son, the builder's son would be executed. And if it had killed a slave, a wardem, the penalty was purely financial. The builder would simply owe the owner a replacement slave of equal value. Life, under the law, had a price, and that price was dictated by your social standing. Now let's consider the lifeblood of Babylon, the river. A boatman is hired to transport a merchant's cargo of barley, the silver of the common person. Through his own carelessness, he wrecks the boat and loses the grain. Here, the punishment isn't physical but economic. The code's principle is restitution. The boatman is liable. He must replace not only the full value of the lost barley, but the boat itself. This wasn't just about punishing negligence. It was about ensuring the reliability of commerce. For Babylon's economy to function, merchants needed to trust that contracts would be honored and that the state would enforce liability. The king, as shepherd, was also the guarantor of the marketplace. Finally, let's look inside the Babylonian home. A father, furious with his son, decides to disinherit him. Can he simply cast him out? The code says no. The principle here is the preservation of social order. The father would have to bring his case before judges. Only if they determined the son had committed a grave offense, and crucially did so for a second time, could he be legally cut off from his inheritance. This law acts as a check on the absolute power of the patriarch, preventing impulsive decisions that could destabilize a family, which was the fundamental building block of the state. It shows a surprising degree of due process, a concern for stability over pure parental authority. Through these examples of civic responsibility, commercial liability, and family stability, we see the code not just as a list of punishments, but as a blueprint for an ordered society, all under the watchful eye of the shepherd king. The empire Hammurabi, forged through conquest and diplomacy, was a monumental achievement, but it was an achievement tied intimately to the man himself. After his death in 1750 BCE, his successors struggled to maintain the vast territory he had won. Rebellions flared up, and the kingdom's borders began to shrink. The Golden Age was brief. The final dramatic blow came a century and a half later in 1595 BCE. A new power, the Hittites, swept down from the highlands of Anatolia in a daring long-distance raid. They sacked the great city of Babylon, carrying off its wealth and toppling the dynasty Hammurabi had founded. His political creation was shattered. But the code, his monument of words carved in stone, endured. While the empire collapsed, the text itself began a second life. For more than 1,000 years after the fall of his dynasty, Hammurabi's code was revered as a masterpiece of Akkadian literature and a model of royal justice. Scribes in training meticulously copied it onto clay tablets, studying its grammar, its vocabulary, and its elegant formulation of legal principles. It became a classic, a foundational text studied not necessarily to be applied in court, but to be admired as an ideal, the perfect expression of a king bringing order to the world. Its survival was not as a statute book, but as a piece of cultural heritage. This long scribal tradition is what leads to one of the most fascinating and debated aspects of the code's legacy, its potential influence on later legal systems. Scholars have long noted the striking parallels between Hammurabi's laws and the laws found in the Hebrew Bible, particularly the Covenant Code in the Book of Exodus. The phrasing of certain laws, the "if a man does X, then Y shall be done to him" structure, and even specific cases concerning goring oxen or personal injury, bear a remarkable resemblance. This doesn't necessarily mean the biblical authors were copying directly from Hammurabi's Stele. Instead, it suggests they were both drawing from a deep, shared well of ancient Near Eastern legal tradition and concepts of justice that had been circulating for centuries. And this points to the questions that still drive research today. How much of the code reflects the law as it was actually practiced versus the law as Hammurabi wanted it to be seen? How did the lives of the commoners, the mushkinim, truly differ from the elites? And who, in a society with limited literacy, was the intended audience for this magnificent public monument? The Stele provides answers, but it also leaves us with mysteries, reminding us that our understanding of the past is never complete, but is a conversation that continues with every new discovery. In the end, we return to where we began. A single, silent monument of polished black diorite. For nearly 4,000 years, the Stele of Hammurabi has stood as a testament to a king and his vision for the world. We've seen that it is far more than an ancient list of punishments. It is one of history's most ambitious and successful works of political branding. It is a theological declaration, casting the king as the chosen shepherd of the people, the earthly agent of divine will. And it is a social blueprint, an idealization of a perfectly ordered society where every person, from the highest noble to the lowest slave, has a place, and every transaction is governed by a principle of cosmic fairness. This was the genius of Hammurabi. He understood that true power wasn't just won on the battlefield or through shrewd diplomacy. It was forged in the hearts and minds of his subjects. By carving his laws into stone and placing them in the public sphere, he fundamentally altered the relationship between the ruler and the ruled. Justice was no longer an arbitrary whim of the powerful. It was a permanent, divinely sanctioned promise from the king himself. The Code was not a book of statutes for judges to consult daily, but a monument to the very idea of justice, a promise that the king was watching, that the gods were watching, and that order would prevail over chaos. The world of ancient Babylon can feel impossibly distant, a civilization of clay tablets and forgotten gods. Yet the fundamental questions Hammurabi grappled with are the same ones we face today. What is the purpose of law? How does a state balance the rights of the individual against the needs of the community? What is the relationship between justice, power, and inequality? Hammurabi's answers, carved in cuneiform, were imperfect and specific to his time, but his decision to ask these questions publicly and to anchor his legitimacy in the promise of a just society echoes through the millennia. The story of Mesopotamia is not a closed chapter. It is a foundational story for so much of human civilization, and its artifacts are still revealing their secrets. The great Stele itself waits in the Louvre Museum in Paris, a tangible link to this distant past. But the legacy of Hammurabi's Babylon can be found anywhere people gather to debate the meaning of justice and the duties of a good government. His code reminds us that the quest for a just and orderly world is one of humanity's oldest and most enduring endeavors. If you're enjoying this, hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more.